It's 18 minutes past 8 o'clock. That means it's time for Sporty Monday, albeit late, but we have lots of content lined up for you. Of course, the title race, I'm talking of the EPL, goes to the wire after the Devils were exorcised 1-0 at Old Trafford. Of course, we'll also be crossing over to Germany, where Bruce Amani is already on standby with the latest in the Bundesliga. Back home, on song Gor Mahia inching much closer to a 21st league title. How about the Golden Boot? Benson Omala and Tito Kello are in a shout for that. Sporty Monday begins now. Welcome to the program. My name is Isaac Swiller. Not to forget our top story, the heat over FKF elections. Which way forward? Is it a normalization committee or what's the way out? My panelists are ready. John Kianda, Steve Shitera, Zita Jimoi, and Jacob Isia will help us break that down. And of course, on the other end of the studio, we have two guests to go deep into that. A sports lawyer in the frame of Mr. Omala, and of course, Harold Ndege, an ex-international. He turned out for Tusker and also Harambee Stars. They'll be telling us much more about that shortly. You don't want to miss that. And now, gentlemen, how are you? Isia, hujambo?
Sijambo. Mambo ni mazuri. I had a beautiful weekend. I need to be honest. You know, I'm always honest. That much as I'm happy with the Devils, my people wakitolewa jana at Trafford, I wanted more. I wanted more. Not just the 3 points, I wanted more. But points make the difference at the end of the day. I'm also happy yesterday the show that our boys and girls showed at the Gong Race Course. They proved indeed that it's not by fluke that we always rule when it comes to these cross countries, even at the senior level. So it was a beautiful, beautiful weekend, save for the fact that, again, I won't see Novak Djokovic reaching the Rome Open final.
Definitely. Zita, hujambo, hali gani?
Salama. Display a very beautiful game yesterday, watching against Arsenal and Manchester United. Despite Manchester United having almost 60+ injuries, they really played very well, because I was expecting more goals from that game. But 1-0, I think amukuleta sharpness yenu, but again, the game was very well. We dominated the second half most of the time. Again, just to say that if Gor Mahia wins their midweek fixture and weekend fixture, they're going to be crowned the champions.
Will be crowned champions. John Kianda.
Yes, very happy, man. As Isia said, expected more. We made them look like Real Madrid. I think the third most boring game I've watched this season, the Gunners playing. But anyway, 3 points. It rained at Old Trafford. The troubles Ronaldo was talking about are still there. Congratulations to Gor Mahia. When they were 9 points ahead, I said the title is gone. I said it with Real Madrid. I said it with Inter Milan. I said it with Bayer Leverkusen. So congratulations, Go. They're winning their 21st title. They need to plan themselves for continental football. Takusikia Marambe hapa tena. Watu wamesota. And the Denver Nuggets versus Timberwolves in the NBA. It's tied 2-2. Jokic versus Anthony Edwards. I think some good basketball there in the NBA.
I'm happy to see a resurrected Jacob Isia. He's been called for the last...
you see, you use very strong words. Resurrected? Was I dead? That's a very strong word.
I'm happy. You see, the only Arsenal fan who remained standing was Kianda.
You see, there's difference between sometimes being a fan
that was evident.
And being a pundit.
So that debate.
So sometimes you speak as a fan, sometimes as a pundit.
So our question of the day, today we're asking you, who will bag the KPL Golden Boot and why? It's a two-horse race between Benson Omala of Gor Mahia and Tito Kello of Kenya Police, all tied at 15 goals apiece. And we're asking you who will bag the KPL Golden Boot. Start texting, start tweeting at Isaac Swiller at TV Kenya, of course. Hashtag is Sporty Monday. Keep the conversation going. We'll be sampling your feedback on Facebook, on X, and also via SMS. The lines are open now. To our top story of the day, I'll begin with you. which way forward? The FKF elections, we saw, quote unquote, or let me call them stakeholders without taking anything away from them, holds a meeting convened by NOC President Paul Tergat, basically to chart a way forward. We know what the courts have said, what the FIFA said. Do you think going the normalization committee route is the way to go?
You see, we have made sport to be played in the courtrooms more than in the stadium for a long time. And therefore, when you are found in a situation that is as complex as this one is, you have to find an alternative that looks likable among the stakeholders. What I mean is that FKF is under 2 instructions from serious bodies that the court says don't continue with the AGM that is supposed to chart out the way forward for the elections. But FIFA comes and says that this is interference.
Proceed with the AGM.
Proceed with the AGM. So I look at, for example, Nick Mwendo, and I pity him in this situation because he has just recent, incidences with the courts just the other day. And if an AGM is held today, I know it's not the entire FKF members who are going to be arrested, for example, for contempt of courts. It's going to be the top leaders, one of them being him. Yeah. Then I look at this other side. FIFA is saying that this interference will attract suspension. At this point, you don't want to hear anything to do with suspension. We are still reeling from the pains of the suspension that was there the other day. So you are in such a dilemma. In Swahili, we say mtanziko mkubwa sana. So basically, what is happening, I think, there is another route that is being now carved to bring a solution through NOC. It is not usual to hear, for example, the NOC President Paul Tergat, speaking matters football with that authority. And let me remind Kenyans that the Athletics Kenya Federation, for a long time, they have not had their elections. When you ask them, they tell you, we are ready even tomorrow, as long as this matter in court is dispensed. So basically, it's to say that the attempt is to make sure that there is another route that will be likable among the Kenyans and also the other stakeholders that now the NOC is trying to bring it.
Zita, thoughts on this?
Yeah, the solution that the NOC is coming up with, it's a very nice solution for all these stakeholders here in Kenya. Looking back in the 1 year ago to make a suspension, and someone who helped us was the CS who was elected, that is Honorable Babu Namwamba, because if ange engage kwa hiyo what was happening, tungekuwa saizi bado tuko kwa suspension. So for me, I think people should put their interest as in away from this, because they're going to do a lot of damage in the football in Kenya. As we can see, 2027 we're preparing for what? For AFCON. If you're going into this back and forth and we are preparing for AFCON, what is going to happen? The AFCON bid is going to be taken from Pamoja. For Pamoja, AFCON bid is going to be taken away from us. So people should think twice before all this fracas. And again, if the normalization committee is going to be made, let it be made, and so that everything can go forward.
Kenda, Zita talks about the dangers, the perils of these election impasse, and she's actually bringing in, we risk losing hosting the AFCON bids. Of course, Ndege will telling us what it means for players. But from where you sit, is this maybe the way to go?
Football in this country sometimes is driven by greed, selfishness, and too many interests. Who gets affected when such things happen are the main stakeholders, who are the fans, then the players. The fans want to enjoy the game. The players have livelihoods to live. When these things go to court, when FIFA comes in and says you're interfering with the football process in the country, who will suffer? We saw what happened. Are we looking at the consequences where? I remember there was a time Police FC went to play a pre-season game in Rwanda. They traveled by bus to Rwanda for a pre-season game. But officials in Rwanda refused to officiate that game because Kenya suspended. We're also looking at the referees. Football stakeholders are many, not just the players and the fans, but the major ones are the fans. As they see, and Zita just put it right, it take the sports CS above Namwamba to go to FIFA and speak to them, like, forgive us, we know where we went wrong. and we are ready to rectify. But because of greed, we are going that route once again. As the CS put it, for Terga to start talking matters football, she will tell you how disorganized the house is. But at the same time, FKF have been told by FIFA, proceed with the AGM. But there's someone who has gone to court and said, it should not go on. So unless we put away the greed and selfishness, we are going to see our football, the major stakeholders, fans, suffering once again, because as Zita put it, you never know what might happen with the Pamoja bid. Second, the players, they have families to feed. What will happen? When the league is suspended, when the football is not recognized by FIFA, sponsors will run away. We last time. We don't have a broadcast sponsor, we don't have a title sponsor. We are going back in a worse way. Na kufanya kosa si kosa. Kurudia kosa, kaka wanasema ni?
Ndio kosa.
Kosa kubwa. Chitera, maybe come in quite briefly. What's the way out of this quagmire? Yes.
I think Ababu Namwamba, the CS, is one smart guy, and is really walking this delicate route to try and avoid the messes we are put in by former CS Amina Mohammed. And as things stand, we are out of the FKF's constitutional guideline, because we will not have an election before October, and then Nick Mwendoa's term will lapse automatically without an election. And that is where Ababu is looking at what happens after October. And that is where now you start hearing about the normalization committee. But he doesn't want to take it head on. He's taking a very smooth route to try and appease FIFA, so that when that time comes, now FIFA will step in, probably with the minister and football stakeholders, and come up with a normalization committee. Because at this point, the FIFA letter was directed to FKF. Because when the AGM was halted, the FKF SG wrote to FIFA that now what do we do? Because we had planned for an AGM on 16th March. It has been stopped by the court. But who went to court? That is the question. It is an FKF official who went to court to stop. If you look at that judiciary letter, it is an FKF official against Milton Nyakundi and SDT. So it is an FKF official who petitioned. So in this case, the letter is directed to FKF that, look, don't prosecute FKF or football matters in court. Proceed with the AGM. Now, the AGM cannot proceed because FKF's official went to court. Court listened to prayers by Nyakundi and halted the AGM.
Because of interest of time, keep it short kindly.
I'm finishing, yes. Now, what will happen? What will happen is FKF cannot defy the courts that they went to. FKF cannot defy AGM, cannot defy FIFA that they've subscribed to. So they are in between. And now that is the fear that we are in.
Hold it right there. Let's give this story context. Football stakeholders are now pushing for the formation of a normalization committee to oversee football transition in the country, blaming FKF for failing to kickstart the election roadmap as per the FKF constitution. A meeting convened by the National Olympic Committee President Paul Tegat and also attended by Sports Cabinet Secretary Ababu Namwamba agreed to a proposal to dissolve FKF and have a normalization committee in place, even as ex-FKF chief Sam Nyamweya called for unconditional withdrawal of all cases pending before the court. Steve Shitera with that story.
The meeting convened by the National Olympics Committee President Paul Tergat brought together former and current football administrators, including former FKF President Sam Nyamweya, former FKF Vice Presidents Twaha Mbarak and Sam Sholei, FC Leopards Chairman Dan Shikanda, former FKF CEOs Lodvika Duda and Michael Esakwa, Wilfred Mairori, Harold Ndege, ex-referee GMT Otieno, Richard Obare, John Bobby Oyugi, Richard Madegwa, Goshi Juma, Ali Amor, sports journalist Milton Nyakundi, ex-international Sami Kempes Owino, to chart the way forward Football Kenya Federation, a member of NOC, was not represented in the meeting. In March this year, the World Football Governing Body FIFA wrote a letter to FKF warning against third-party interference. The letter read in part, "We have received with great concern information regarding the postponement of the FKF AGM due to a court order issued 24 hours before the starting time of the said meeting." The FIFA letter to FKF opened a can of worms, leaving the federation between a rock and a hard place, as a case filed at Mombasa High Court is still pending. In its task letter to FKF CEO Barry Otieno on March 27th, FIFA cautioned the federation not to prosecute football matters in court. In part, the FIFA letter read, "In this respect, and first of all, we draw your attention to Article 69 of the FKF statutes, which expressly stipulates that dispute within the FKF or affecting leagues, members of leagues, clubs, members of clubs, players, officials and other FKF officials shall not be submitted in ordinary courts unless the FIFA regulations, the FKF statutes or binding legal provisions specifically provide for or stipulate recourse to ordinary courts."
They went to Mombasa to gag the ruling of STD so that the contempt proceedings do not come out.
The CS has no power to reinstate anybody from office once they have been removed by Section 54(2) of the Sports Act.
FIFA has given a directive, so it doesn't matter what they are saying. And the courts have given a directive. It doesn't matter what they are saying. They are not law unto themselves.
Then what will happen is FIFA will have to come into play and form a normalization committee like they have done in several other countries, solely for the purpose of conducting the election.
FKF was to hold the AGM in March this year, 6 months to the elections, which were set for October.
What will happen is that everybody's term will expire except that of the president, who will only have limited powers in terms of only the probably administrative functions, but he has no power to enter into any legal binding contracts that may bind the FKF.
And the responsibility now lies in the hands of the branch officials who form part of the Congress, as well as the clubs who form part of the Congress.
But the minister should come out and rein on these guys to remove the cases from court. It may not be interference because already the cases are in court. And FIFA had given a warning to FKF that those cases should be withdrawn. You have seen what happened in Spain. They had now to rein because the law must be followed. The minister is in charge of the Sports Act. So let him act.
All said, Kenya walks a tightrope with the possibility of another FIFA sanction not too far off. Steve Shitera, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
And there's a story by Steve Shitera giving us context into the election heat or impasse, whatever way you want to call it. And of course, to help us break that down, I have to my immediate right, Mr. Harold Ndege. Hujambo bana?
Sijambo.
Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Okay. Harold Ndege, that's an ex-international featured for Harambee Stars and of course Tusker FC. And of course we have Mr. Rafael Omala, a sports lawyer, who will also help us give in the legal perspective regarding this. So Harold, I'll begin with you. Yep. You've seen the story Steve has done. And basically, you were one of the attendees of that meeting called by NOC president. Maybe begin, tell us what transpired and maybe the need of that meeting.
Well, the purpose of that meeting was to find a solution towards the impasse that Kenyan football is facing at the moment. I think it is important to mention that the current administration at Football Kenya Federation is in office illegally. They have demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that they have the propensity to compete for criminal supremacy. And not only that, they have also demonstrated that they are suffering from delusions of grandeur. We are in this position because they have refused to acknowledge the law. they have refused to comply not only with the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Kenya, but also their own constitution, the FKF Constitution, and also the FIFA statutes. We're in this position because the National Executive Committee member for Coast Region, Gabriel Mugendi, sought an injunction against a pending sports dispute tribunal ruling with regards to a contempt of court case. If we go back 2 years earlier, when the then Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Ambassador Amina Mohamed, disbanded the FKF, the FKF petitioned the SDT. Okay, the SDT agreed with Amina Mohamed that she legally disbanded FKF. They were not happy with that ruling. They went to the High Court, which is against the FIFA statutes of seeking redress in a court of law. The High Court agreed with the SDT. So hence, their reinstatement through the Office of the Ministry of Sports was illegal, because the High Court and the Sports Dispute Tribunal had pronounced themselves.
So in short, what you're saying, Harold, they shouldn't be in office? They
shouldn't be in office, including the General Secretary of Football Kenya Federation. He was also found by the Court of Arbitration of Sports to be occupying that office illegally. Now, that meeting was supposed to find a way forward, and the conclusion of that meeting found out that the only way out of this quagmire is to have a normalization committee. Why a normalization committee? Article 8.2 of the FIFA statutes grants FIFA the right to remove the executive membership of a member association, to hound them out of office and replace them with a normalization committee. We are here because if you look at the proceedings just before the AGM, there's the issue of the electoral code, which the eligibility clause of that particular electoral code was found to be illegal by the SDT in 2020. But they are still proposing the same code to be used in the elections of 2024, which is a contempt of court case again. As I said earlier, these guys have demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that they have a propensity to compete for criminal supremacy.
Let me bring in Omala. You've listened to Ndege, and probably from a legal perspective as a practitioner lawyer. First, do you agree by the sentiments Harold is making?
Well, concerning the legality of the FKF officials, it is more or less a catch-22 in that their legitimacy in Kenya, they lack legitimacy in Kenya in view of the ruling of the High Court. However, FIFA is still directing them, and FIFA still recognizes them as the sole legitimate owners of administration of Kenyan football. So you see, we have a catch-22 in that. Yes, looking at it, and given the rulings and judgments by the court, they are in office illegally, because once you are removed from office, there isn't a way back in office. However, once they were reinstated in office, they regained eligibility in that, in the eyes of FIFA, not necessarily in the eyes of the laws of Kenya. So yes, there should be a normalization committee. However, where we find a challenge is, it is FIFA who is supposed to be the driver of this committee, because we cannot come up as members, as people, and say we are going to form.
We are forming this.
Yes.
So FIFA needs to play a leading role in this.
Yes, it has to be. FIFA has to at least have its own members, at least, so that it is a normalization committee by FIFA. So FIFA will have its own members, and then maybe you can suggest so that even if it's 5 or an odd number of 5 or 7, at least FIFA is the one which is supposed to take lead in this.
So Mala, how do we proceed? There are two key issues you are raising here. One, there's the legibility question, and you're saying they are not in office legally, at least guided by the local laws. And two, there's the process of having a normalization committee. First, how do I address the first question of being in office basically, they shouldn't be in office, so to speak. How do I address that? And two, now, he was part of the meeting convened by Paul Tergat, basically to chart a way forward. How then now do we start engaging FIFA and say, now, look, this is the situation in Kenya, we want this committee in place. How do we proceed with that?
Okay, so the first question about their eligibility is that there's an active case in the Court of Appeal. So we have to wait to see, but going by the trend is that there is nothing that provides for a way back into office once you've been removed by the sports registrar. I don't want to propound what the Court of Appeal will say, but it looks like there is no way back for you. There's nothing in the law that provides for you being brought back into office once you have been removed, or once you've been removed under the provisions of the Sports Act. So that will be the first. The second one, in regards to the normalization committee, you see, it has to come from members. So the people who... The
members of the Federation of FKF.
Yes, so it is the members. The other person who might be the minister, but then we might be drawing a line between government interference and the independence of the federation. So yes, we are on the right track in that we're having the right conversation. However, it has to be FIFA-led. It has to be member-led. So once members agree, or the way we have seen the meeting that took place, that was convened by NOC, so we would have loved to see some FKF members also participating in that meeting to show some goodwill. It was unfortunate that the federation itself was not present in the meeting, because they were essentially on the agenda, but they were not represented. So that brings a sort of a challenge when it comes to forming this committee.
He talks of contempt, and he says the federation were invited. I don't know that they were, but if they are contemptuous of court, how do we proceed? Because again, we can't have a lacuna. Football must be played, it must be managed, things must run. As things stand, they are still running the federation. Those FKF fixtures are still going on. We are seeing referees still undergoing coaching courses and getting the badges. How do we proceed now? Because they're saying they are not in office illegally. This question of contempt, how do we address it?
Yeah, but remember,
does somebody go back to court and say, look, these gentlemen are not following the law?
Yeah, but remember, as the appeal is going on, they got a stay of execution orders, so that they can continue with it's called a conservancy order, so that they can continue running football as the eligibility to run it is concerned. So until we are done with the Court of Appeal, that is when we can conclusively determine whether or not they are in office eligibly.
Harold, there's a clash of laws here from where I sit. Because there are laws of the lands. We are talking of Sports Act 2013, basically, which regulates and outlines how the federations should be managed. There's the Constitution 2010, of course, but there are also the FIFA statutes. I see laws here clashing, and many a times FIFA will say, look, our matters must not be dragged in a court of law, like we've said. The very FIFA we are talking about in Switzerland, where they are based or domiciled, they subject themselves to the laws of that land.
I think it is important for us to know that the laws and the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya are supreme to the FIFA statutes and to the FKF Constitution. FKF is registered at the preamble of the FKF Constitution. You read that they are saying that they are registered under the Sports Act 2013. That's the first line on that preamble. It is not they are registered under the FIFA statutes. Number two, it is also important to know that with regards to the normalization committee, there was already a precedent set in 2004, where the then Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Najib Balala, disbanded FKF because they had exceeded their term and they had refused to comply with the law, they had refused to hold elections, and the High Court pronounced them illegal. Najib Balala went ahead from a transitional committee led by Mike Boyd. Then that's the first time we were suspended by FIFA. But through the leadership of the late Kipchoge Keino, he prevailed upon FIFA to come to the negotiating table. He prevailed upon FKF to come to the negotiating table and have a normalization committee. What was proposed in that meeting last week is the same individual of the stature of the late Kipchoge Keino, and that is Dr. Paul Tergat. Okay, his stature, he's a world sports personality. He can prevail upon FIFA to come to the table and say, here, we're already in a constitutional quagmire because the laws of the country are not going to be bent because of a FIFA suspension. And by the way, if there is somebody who's supposed to be suspended, it should not be FKF. It should be the president of the current president, and I'm saying the president in quotes, and his officials, including the general secretary, because they're the ones who went to court. They are bringing the game into disrepute. The normalization committee will be able to solve this constitutional crisis so that when we move forward, there are no cases challenging the legality of the federation. The normalization committee will ensure we have a free, a fair, and a transparent election. We've already seen that the electoral code eligibility clause is illegal. We've already seen that there is no independence of the election board. How comes the National Executive Committee is nominating members of the board of the election? You cannot be a player in the game and you are a referee.
But Harold, if we want to make this all inclusive, I think that committee or that meeting has already begun on the wrong footing, because I looked at the list, you are there and several other players. The man in question, the elephant in the room was not in that meeting. That was the secretary.
Fantastic question. We were reliably informed that Football Kenya Federation were invited to that particular meeting. And what did they do? They showed the public the middle finger, figuratively. So in short, they said their concern was not to be on the negotiating. They don't care about Kenyan football. Okay? The managerial ineptitude that we keep on witnessing every single day in this administration is mind-boggling. If they cannot even to be able to respect the National Olympic Committee of Kenya, led by Dr. Paul Tergat himself, a huge personality, and FKF is a member of National Olympic Committee Kenya. Now has 29 members. If they cannot attend such a meeting, why would we think that these individuals will comply with the law? And they are showing it to our faces that you guys, we don't care about what the court say, we don't care about what the SDT says, we don't care about what the stakeholders, who are the taxpayers who fund Football Kenya Federation operations every single day, they don't care about us.
Omala, we are coming from almost a similar situation. We saw what Ambassador Mina did as sports CS. He disbanded the federation. Back then there were issues of accountability and so on and so forth. He had an interim committee, but basically I don't think Kenya got the desired results, because what we saw was a FIFA injunction or suspension, if you so wish. Again, when Amwamba came in, he had to undo the damage, quote unquote. He dialogued with FIFA just to have our football back into the international cycles. Now, you are talking of this normalization committee now, basically a state-led approach. What probably are the practical steps the sports CS probably need to play to ensure, even as we navigate through this, the number one stakeholder, the footballer, does not suffer?
Okay, so the first thing is that we need to be wary of time. Because this Friday we have the FIFA Congress. The agenda is already out, and we know always Agenda 4 is usually for the consideration of suspension or expulsion.
Members associations.
Yes. Now, mercifully, we are not there yet. So the first battle that he needs to win is to make sure that this time next week, we have not yet been suspended by the FIFA Congress, which is happening this Friday in Bangkok. Secondly, is for him to prevail upon the federation in itself, because he managed to prevail upon them the first time that they came back into office. So now that we are in this situation in which it is a mess that has been created by everyone, it is not time to say who has created the mess, it is time to fix it. So the first thing he needs to do is to prevail upon these members and to prevail upon FIFA that the situation we're in is not ideal, so that FIFA itself will want to form a normalization committee. Now, the problem that might happen is FIFA might insist on having the people it recognizes to be part of that committee. Like it did last time when it said, bring your members, first reinstate our validly elected members, then we can sit down. Yes. So that will be the only issue, that if FIFA is to be involved, the elephant in the room again will be these people who people are claiming are in office illegally.
Interesting, the elephant in the room. Harold, real quick, because of time. You're a former footballer, and I want to know, because I think Kenya has been suspended several times. Even as a young boy, as early as '96, we're already being suspended. Up to now, we've never really gotten a solution. It has been, look, we are suspended, the player going to pay the high price, and rightfully so. They won't be able to probably change clubs. The referees won't be able to officiate international league matches. Harambee Stars and all the junior ranks won't be able to play with other countries. That's the picture. Now, you wear the shoe of a player, having played the game. What would you want to see?
Compliance with the law. Footballers comply with the law on the pitch. Why can't the football administrators, who are the leaders of these footballers, comply with the law? And we are in this quagmire, by the way. The office of the Ministry of Sports, the office of the Registrar of Sports, and the Sports Fund, they were sued with regards to facilitating the operations of an illegal entity, that is FKF, through taxpayers' money. There's a court case with regards to that. Okay? So it is important for us that when we want to move forward, the solution is to have a normalization committee. It will ensure that we have a free, fair, and transparent election. It will ensure that the electoral code that will be used in that particular election is free and fair. And the eligibility clause in that code will allow individuals to run. Number two, the voter register, which is critical. They already report that they're playing around the voter register. That normalization committee will ensure that the clubs that have been participating in the FKF recognized leagues in the previous 3 football calendars will participate. The third thing is the independence of that election board. We do not...
For the election register, how do you tamper with it? Because it's a straightforward issue for me. It's the FKF branches, it's the top-tier clubs in the...
As a stakeholder outside, it's straightforward. If you're within Football Kenya Federation and you know the mechanism that they're deploying right now, they're trying to register other teams that have not been participating. And once the branch chairmen have filed returns with the federation with regards to the teams that they believe were playing in the league, that's final. Okay? There are no judicial bodies that we can use to make an appeal. The normalization committee will also ensure that the government projects with regards to sports, that is CHAN and the Africa Cup of Nations, are not in jeopardy. Because if we continue with the same trend as we are right now, even if FIFA insists that the current administration to continue the election, somebody will still go to court and challenge the legality of this current administration with regards to organizing a tournament of the stage of AFCON and CHAN. So it is prudent that as we move forward, the rule of law must prevail.
Finally, your thoughts, Omala, from a legal perspective, the dangers and solutions as we proceed forward.
The dangers, I mean, people like APS, Bomet, and Fortune Sacco are still reeling from the decision that was taken 2-3 years ago. You see, like for instance, Fortune Sacco is not going to be playing in the playoffs to qualify for the NSL, yet they were essentially a Premier League team 2 years ago, having won the NSL itself and qualified to the Premier League. So the ramifications are major for everyone, and it's not something that, at least the bigger picture, if we are to look at the bigger picture, we don't want to go back to where we fought so hard to get out of a ban. And given that what's coming in September, that we have CHAN, and what's coming in 2 years, in 2-3 years, which is the AFCON. So I think for now, the only solution is for us to have this normalization committee, because it has happened elsewhere. It happened in Ghana, it happened in Sierra Leone. So these are things that it is nothing new. And it is time, I think it is time for all the stakeholders to consider this.
Yes, all stakeholders to consider this. Maybe I'll get a final remark from you, Ndege, in 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds.
Spain, Kenya, almost similar situation. And we followed through. When there's government hand, more so in the major economies, or the big football nations, we don't really see FIFA come very hard on them. They'll employ more of diplomacy, and we saw that with Spain. How come when it's a third world country or Africa, they are very quick to suspend?
Well, it's conspicuously clear that there is an application of double standards. And the Kenyan situation, we are in a situation whereby the Kenyan case is an extraordinary case like that one of 2004. The more the reason we are proposing that this case of 2024 and the one of 2004, 20 years later, are similar. Hence, the application of a normalization committee. It is also important to note that there are only 2 beings on this planet that do not follow the law. It is only God and wild animals. So unless FKF wants to go and live with wild animals in the forest, they should follow the law.
That is Harold Ndege. His thoughts, an ex-international, and of course Rafael Omala, who is a sports lawyer. Of course, the big discussion being on FKF question. How do we proceed with elections? Do we break the law? Do we follow the law? Those are your thoughts. Of course, we'll stay top of this story in the coming days and weeks until a solution is found. And to the question of the day today, we're asking you who will bag the KPL Golden Boot and why. The contest between Benson Omala of Gor Mahia and Tito Okello of Kenya Police FC. And there goes your feedback, Kekeroi. You're saying, Zito, you can take it up?
Watch out for John Makwata. I think it's a 3-horse race about bagging. I'm rooting for Omala.
Actually, Makwata has 11 goals.
Actually. Do you have another one? Titus
Wambua says, Okello, Titus, I have been a great fan of this guy from Akiwa Viper. I just want him to win.
Yeah, Okello Tito, I have been a great fan of this guy since Akiwa Vipers. I just want him to win. That's Titus Wambua. Simiu Isaac is saying it's just simple. Benson Omala is taking it. He's a good finisher.
Titus Musembi anasema Benson Omala atachukua golden boot juu huyo boy ni golden too, scoring in nearly every game. Brian Arisa.
Omala anaweza win hii cause ana fight sana kutafuta bao ukimlinganisha na Tito.
Of course, those are your feedback. We'll be sampling more during this program. Remember, this is Sporty Monday, and of course, the show continues. And of course, I must thank my guest, Harold Ndege, for making time. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, Mr. Omala. Thank you so much for making time. We'll do this again. Of course, Sporty Monday takes a brief commercial break, but don't go away. If we come back, we have a whole catalog on EPL. You don't want to miss that. Stay tuned.